Philo alcoholic. Hey, hey, hey. Pew, pew, pew. All right, Melly. Hey, Melly's my baby smile friend, sunshine. Anyway, and thanks, Juliet, for asking me to come and share my experience, strength, and hope. I have some today, thanks to Alcoholics Anonymous. I had none when I got here, so that's something. And thanks to Joan, my friend Joan and I travel together on Zoom a lot. She's 63 years sober and got sober at 25, so, you know, my sobriety date's January 4th of 87. So I'm 34 years sober. And Joan says, that's a good start. So if you're new, and you think that 34 years seems like unfathomable to you, I'm here to tell you it's unfathomable to me that an alcoholic of my type and kind who could not put together, 30 hours of sobriety forever. So it's like could put together 30 days, much less 30 weeks. So for all of you counting days, keep coming back and happy birthday. And yeah, so my home group is the Arlington group on Tuesdays and Thursday nights here in Los Angeles, California. And it's the oldest group here in LA. And now that I'm old, I like hang out with these old people, but I have a long history in young people's AA and Ikipa and Akipa and all that stuff, which is how I know Juliet. And yeah, in my independent, casual, random surveys that I've been doing in Alcoholics Anonymous over the years, which consist just generally of generalities and stuff. It's nothing too specific, but, they kind of started when I was new because like this guy I knew had like 5 years relapse and I was so worried about it. I went to my sponsor and I said like, oh my God, how did he relapse? And she said, go do a survey. So it's like, so it's like a survey about what? She's like, well, find out what they were doing, find out what they weren't doing, find out everything, go talk to them. So it was like, okay. So my surveys started a long time ago. But my surveys in young people's and Alcoholics Anonymous, have revealed a few things to me. And that is that, most of us who are young in AA, when we come to AA, we quite often hear this like, oh, you're so lucky to come to Alcoholics Anonymous so young. Right on. Lucky you. Boy, I wish I was you getting sober young. You're so lucky. And I tell you, I did not feel lucky at all when I got here. I felt ripped off for one. I felt like, oh my gosh, like I want to, like, I love alcohol. I love drinking. Like, I want to drink for another 20, 30 years. Like, why am I being ripped off like this? So there's that. But I mean, underneath that is that like what I've sort of figured out over time is that young people in AA usually have something else going on. And that's why we end up in Alcoholics Anonymous so young, like maybe you come from a crazy alcoholic family with a lot of crazy abuse. I do. Maybe you come from a family with a lot of mental illness. I do. Maybe you come from families with like trauma and suicide. I do. You know what I mean? It's like maybe you had confusion about your sexuality or your gender or both. I did. You know what I mean? It's like maybe you have other substances at play that like to accelerate that alcohol into the ground even faster. I did, but it's like, so all of these things that are true were true for me, not just one of them. But in my experience, it seems like all of the young people in AA that I've met that get sober outside of those people that, the ones who like got caught smoking a joint in the bath, room, and then their mom sends them to treatment when they're 15, those people. That's not who I am. I'm talking about the real people who, not to say that you're not real if that's half your story, but I mean, it's like, if you've actually, have an extensive history of any type or form, it's like, in my experience, there's stuff that's going on. And why I tell you all of this is because if you have that experience, you can recover from it all too. And when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was so broken and so damaged that I thought that nothing good was ever going to happen in my life. Nothing could possibly ever happen for me, Alcoholism runs down both sides of my family. My mother was mentally ill. She was always going to kill herself. I was doing everything perfectly just so she wouldn't die on a daily basis because it was that kind of house. And, and at the age of 11, I went over to Billy Kincaid's house and we had a party. We got a fifth of lime vodka. We poured it in a punch bowl. I had my little punch cup and I we thought, I said, wait, we should put something else in this punch. So we decided on 1 can of Squirt, because Squirt is a citrus flavored soda and lime is citrus. So it made sense to us to put these two citruses together. And then we pour in 1 can of Squirt and stir, and I have a spiritual awakening. And not everybody in Alcoholics Anonymous seems to have that experience the first time they drink, but I certainly did. And it's like I didn't know things were that wrong until I had alcohol and realized, oh my gosh, you guys, they can be this right. Why didn't anybody tell me this 11 years ago? Why have I been living all this time without it? And I made a pledge at the age of 11, I'm going to be doing this as often as possible for the rest of my freaking life, right? And I proceeded to do just that. I was a teenage alcoholic. I graduated from high school, which was a big deal because neither of my parents did and my brothers didn't. It was this big deal. Can you just finish high school? Just finish high school. So I finished high school. And, they had a slideshow at the senior breakfast for every student. And they were like, Kathy Gullickson. Oh, remember when Kathy Gullickson won the Washington State debate tournament for her debate on evolution versus creationism? And Philo Hagen, remember when Philo Hagen was passed out in the school parking lot and everyone parked their cars around him and no one woke him up until third period? Somebody in the back yelled, which time? And and everybody laughed. And I laughed louder than anyone, even though it broke my heart, you guys, because it's like, but I had already mastered this art of you will never know that you ever got to me or that I had a feeling about any of it ever. So I'm laughing louder than anybody, like 82 brew crew, woo, but it's like later on I'm in the bathroom and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, there's something really wrong with my drinking, you guys. There's something really wrong with my drinking. So if you're new because you've had a moment of clarity about your drinking, it's like, I had them all the time. Like then at, 18, graduated from high school, only when I came out of the bathroom, Tony Astonelli said, hey, there's a kegger at Arlene's tonight. Are you going? And I was like, oh, kegger at Arlene's? Yeah, let's go. So it's like, the problem with me is I'm unable to hold on to that information when I need it the most. I got this problem where once I start drinking, I can't stop. They call it a physical allergy, which just means a hypersensitivity, which just means like once I drink, I get thirstier. You know what I'm saying? Like I get thirstier, which wouldn't be that big of a problem because it's like, oh, well, then let's just not do that. But the other side of this weird disease called alcoholism is that once I start, I can't stop, but I can't stop starting. I just can't stop starting. I'm making resolutions all the time. I'm not going to do this today. I'm not going to do this, and I'm doing it anyway. And then I'm doing it again. Or you think it's a good, oh yeah, you want me to, oh, you offered me that? Oh yeah, sure, I guess I'll do that. And the next thing you know, I'm doing it over and over and over again. My story is like, tragic young people's story where I move out the day after I graduate from high school. We held on to that apartment for 4 months. I end up on the streets for the next 4 years. I'm breaking into cars, not something I ever thought I'd ever do. There's kids down the street who are like hopping in cars with strangers and having sex for cash. And I'm like, wow, those kids are really sad. Never going to be one of those kids. But then about 3 months later, when I'm really thirsty on a rainy night and I don't have any money, I'm like thinking, how bad can it be? And I'm here to tell you, in my experience, it can be pretty freaking bad. It can be bad enough that I think I need a drink over that. And then I'm out of my money again. So I think I need to hop in another car with another stranger and have sex with somebody else so that I can get money so that I can drink over having to hop in cars with strangers and have sex with them. And this is my story for the next 3.5 years. And I tell you that, you guys, because it turns out in Alcoholics Anonymous that my dark tale has turned into my greatest asset. Like there's not one single thing that's happened to me that hasn't turned out to be something of value in helping another person stay sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know what I mean? There's not one single thing. It's not like we get to be helpful here in spite of AA, not in spite of who we are or where we come from, but because of who we are and where we come from. Like all the crap that happened in my house has turned up on how many people's fifth steps where I get to go, oh yeah, I have stories like that too. every single thing that I thought was the worst stuff in the world has turned out to be something of value here in AA. So on January 3rd, when I was picked up by the police, and came to strapped to a bed at Harborview Hospital, and they asked me all these questions, and I lied on all the answers. This nurse finally said, "Philo, I'm going to tell you what's wrong with you." And I got excited, you guys, because I knew there was something wrong with me. There had been something wrong with me for a very long time. Ask anybody, they would have said, "There's something wrong with that kid." And it's like, but I don't know. And I was excited. I'm so excited. What's it going to be? And you know what she said? She said, "Your problem, Philo, is you're a chronic alcoholic." And I'm like, "How dare you, lady? I'm too young. Are you insane?" Because I'd rather be a whore. I'd rather be mentally ill. I'd rather be criminally insane. But like an alcoholic? How dare you? And if I'm alcoholic, how are you supposed to get through the day? Because the only thing I know how to get through a day is drinking, But they sent me on a short bus to this place, and I argued with this woman, and I came to this massive realization, because she told me, she says, "Philo, maybe you're an alcoholic and you don't even know it. Maybe you're so crazy you don't even know you're an alcoholic." Because we have this disease that tells us we don't have this disease, And they started sending me to meetings at Alcoholics Anonymous, where I caught the disease of alcoholism, And then I got a sponsor who turned out to be someone I didn't really want to have as a sponsor, but it's like he turned out to be somebody pretty great. Because why? Because he was one of those guys, one of those old guys, this biker dude that I had nothing in common with, but would take me to the International House of Pancakes and buy me a short stack every night after the 8 o'clock meeting. And I'll go anywhere for a short stack of pancakes. It's like, okay, let's go. And so, so I'm there and we're going through this book, and all we're doing is reading this book. And every time it says to do something in the book, we do exactly what it says in the book. And as a result of it, I've gotten to have a spiritual awakening that is sufficient enough to keep me from drinking ever. And I haven't found it necessary really to take a drink to this day, you guys. 34 freaking years later. There's something powerful that happens when we work the steps out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Like in the beginning, it says, we are people left to our own devices who are unable to stop ourselves from putting our hands on a hot stove. Like, "It won't burn me this time. Here's how." And it's like, well, I'm going to only stick to tequila tonight. And Juliet and I have had a whole plate of Mexican food, and we're not going to have red wine with it this time, because you know what a shit show that turned out to be, right, Juliet? So we're not only going to stick to tequila, we're not mixing it with something else. And I'm sticking with Juliet. I'm not hanging with Glenn, because when I was hanging with Glenn, you know what happened. That was bad. I'm not going to hang out with Glenn when I'm drinking again. I'm hanging out with Juliet. And inevitably, it's the same crap every time, right? It's the same crap every time, So it's a miracle, that I'm able to put together any sobriety at all. It won't burn me this time. Here's how. Oh, it won't burn me this time. Here's how. Oh, and it's doing it again and again. And yet you work the steps as outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then you have the 10-step promises, which talk about we will now recoil from alcohol as if it were a hot flame. We couldn't seem to drink even if we wanted to. It has become a non-issue. And how does that happen? Because there's something wacky. There's something very powerfully weird and wacky that happens here in Alcoholics Anonymous when we work the steps, as outlined in the big book. And I had to do it with a sponsor. And as a result of it, I got to have a life that kids who come from where I come from do not get to have. Kids who come from the kind of house I grew up in don't tend to go anywhere. Kids who live on the streets and do the kind of crap that I've been doing tend to not end up going anywhere, If not, I'm so lucky. I don't know. I don't know if I would have necessarily have drank myself to death, but boy, I should have, I'm lucky to be alive from all the crap that I put myself, all the crappy situations I put myself in on a regular daily basis. Not just every once in a great while, but on a daily basis, I was putting my life in danger. And I'm somehow through all that and doing these steps and getting a little outside help, it's oh my gosh, I have a life I could not imagine, And I got to get out of Washington and move to California, and I got friends like Joan, and I got sponsees like Daniel and Debs. Debs isn't my sponsee, but like the two of them, we follow each other around. Debs just had they both had 90 days recently, and we're excited. Woo, woo, woo. And they're doing it all on Zoom because it's like when I think things are getting weird in my life, and boy, the last year has been very weird. It's like the thing that I have learned to do is just throw more AA at it, throw another service commitment at it if I can get one, check in with my spouse, work the steps again. Why not? I'm not doing anything else at home, sitting at home most of the time by myself, right? It's like, there's nothing that good has ever come from working the steps in Alcoholics Anonymous. Nothing but good has ever come from working the steps in Alcoholics Anonymous. But every single time that I'm about to do it, my head will still fight me, which tells me this disease is alive and well. I was sitting late and ready to work on my 4th step, and it's like, oh my gosh, these floors are really dirty. Like, maybe I should mop these floors. Like, it's like my thinking, the alcoholism lives in my thinking. And it's like somehow like mopping floors, something I would never really want to do, is being told to me that this is now more important than like doing a little something that not only might save my life, but like give me some happy, joyous, and free action on a daily basis. So it's cunning, baffling, and powerful. I have tremendous respect for alcohol after 34 years and watching it in my own life and sobriety and seeing what it does in the lives of others, and I keep coming back because it's like, there's nowhere else I'd want to be. I don't want to go back to the hell that I crawled out of, but boy, have I found an infinitely more better way to live. So thanks, you guys.